It was December 1941. Along Queens Road, shop windows glittered. Tinsel caught the light. Christmas decorations swayed gently in the breeze. Hotels confirmed reservations for Christmas dinner. Menus were printed. Tables were dressed at private clubs. The British elite played cricket. White uniforms. Polite applause. In the wet markets, local Chinese families crowded the stalls. Fish thrashed in buckets. Vendors shouted over one another. Life felt permanent. Life felt safe, but the city was already a ghost. It just didn't know it yet. Far across the ocean, in London, the rooms were quiet. Wood-paneled walls. Heavy tables. Maps spread wide. Then, slowly, they were folded. The decision had already been made. Hong Kong was not going to be saved. It was a sacrificial lamb, a symbol meant to bleed. This is the story of Black Christmas. 17 days of fire. 3 years of silence. Hong Kong was called the Gibraltar of the East. That was the slogan. It sounded strong. It sounded unbreakable. But slogans do not stop armies. By 1941, the world was at war. Europe was burning. The Pacific was tightening. Hong Kong remained a bubble. It's isolated, exposed. The British government knew the truth. Winston Churchill knew the truth. The colony was militarily indefensible. It was too far from London. Too close to the expanding Japanese empire. It had no real air force. Its navy had already been stripped away. To defend Hong Kong properly would have required thousands of aircraft. Hundreds of warships. Britain had none to spare. Every bullet was needed in Europe. Every ship. Every bolt of steel. So the plan was simple, and brutally honest: no reinforcements. No evacuation. No surrender. They would fight anyway. They called it prestige. Soldiers would later call it a death sentence to fill the ranks. Britain reached across its empire. Indian regiments arrived first. Sikh soldiers. Punjabi soldiers. Veterans of hard fighting. Local volunteers were mobilized. Clerks, shopkeepers, men defending the city they called home. Then Britain asked Canada for help. Canada sent 2 battalions. The Royal Rifles. The Winnipeg Grenadiers. They were young. Some barely out of school. Many had never seen mountains. Many had never fired their weapons in real combat. One battalion was officially labeled not ready for war. They were sent anyway. They arrived in November 1941, 6 weeks to learn the terrain. 6 weeks to adapt to the heat. 6 weeks to understand the truth. They were trapped to keep morale alive. Officers softened reality. They said the Japanese were weak. They said Japanese pilots couldn't fly at night. They said the Japanese army was exhausted from China. They lied, because the truth would have crushed them. December 8th, 1941. 8 o'clock a.m. in Hong Kong. The sun was rising. The streets were waking. Then the sirens sounded. They didn't scream. They tore the morning in half. At Kai Tak Airport, British aircraft sat on the runway. Lined up, exposed, they never took off. Japanese bombers roared overhead in perfect formation. Bombs fell. Runways burned in minutes. Hong Kong's air defense ceased to exist. The message from the sky was unmistakable. No one was coming. On the mainland, the Japanese 38th Division advanced. Disciplined, experienced, relentless. They did not move as British planners expected. They did not march openly. They moved like smoke. Through hills. Through jungle. At night, the terrain became their weapon. The British defensive line stretched across the new territories. It was called the Gin Drinkers Line. Bunkers, trenches, concrete, and steel. It was meant to hold for weeks. The Japanese breached its strongest point, Xingmen Redoubt, a single night. The line collapsed. The speed was shocking. By December 11th, the order was given: abandon the mainland. Retreat to Hong Kong Island. Soldiers scrambled onto ferries. Under fire. In chaos, behind them, Kowloon burned. Explosions shook the harbor as British engineers destroyed their own docks. They would leave nothing usable behind. The illusion of safety was gone. The siege began. Japanese. Artillery rose on the Kowloon hills. Looking down, patient shells rained onto the island. Day and night, whistling steel. Collapsing stone, civilians hid in basements. The air smelled of cordite, and sewage water mains shattered. Thirst became a weapon. December 18th, under cover of darkness, Japanese forces crossed the water. They landed in the industrial north. The battle changed. This was no longer strategy. It was survival. Bayonets in the dark. Hand-to-hand fighting. Confusion. Canadian units fought in the hills. Indian regiments held narrow passes. They were pushed back. Yard by yard, the island bled. Strategic points fell one after another. Then came Wong Nai Chung Gap, the heart of the island. The key to everything? It became a slaughterhouse. Brigadier John Lawson, commanding the Canadian forces, realized he was surrounded. He took 2 pistols. Walked out of his bunker. He was killed where he stood. There were no reinforcements, no water. No hope. Christmas Day arrived in London. Families tried to celebrate blackouts, rationing, quiet prayers. In Hong Kong, there was only smoke and death. At St. Stephen's College, a temporary hospital, the worst occurred. Japanese troops broke through. They ignored the Red Cross, ignored the Geneva Convention. Wounded soldiers were bayoneted in their beds. Doctors were murdered. Nurses were taken. It was a complete collapse of humanity. By afternoon, surrender was unavoidable. At the Peninsula Hotel, Governor Sir Mark Young met Japanese commanders. Dim lights, heavy air. He signed the document. The fighting stopped. Black Christmas had begun. Surrender did not bring peace, it brought occupation. Soldiers were marched through the streets disarmed, defeated. They were sent to camps. North Point, Sham Shui Po. Canadians, British, Indians, packed into rotting huts. Food was maggot-ridden rice. Disease spread unchecked. Diphtheria, cholera, beriberi. Men survived battle. Then died slowly. Many were shipped to Japan, on hell ships, unmarked, unventilated. They worked in coal mines, factories, slave labor, beaten, starved, forgotten, civilians. Suffered alongside them Japanese military currency, erased life savings overnight. Public executions became common. People disappeared into gendarmerie headquarters. They never returned. Hundreds of thousands fled toward mainland China. Many died on the journey. The occupation lasted 3 years and 8 months. A time of hunger, a time of silence. In 1945, the war ended. British forces returned. Flags rose again, but the Hong Kong of 1941 was gone. Survivors returned, changed. The Canadian boys became haunted men. They didn't speak of Wong Nai Chung Gap. They didn't speak of the camps. They lived with ghosts. Hong Kong moved forward. The city rebuilt. It grew. It prospered. Bunkers disappeared under vines. Bullet holes vanished under plaster. But the truth remains. At Saiwan War Cemetery, white stones stand in endless rows. Names from Winnipeg, from Punjab, from London, from Hong Kong. They died for a symbol. They died for a city unprepared. They died on a Christmas that turned black. History is not just dates. It is cost. 17 days that changed a city forever. Men who fought knowing they were lost. The next time you walk through Central or look down from the peak, remember the fire. Remember the silence. Remember Black Christmas.